Hello and welcome to another Punters Guide, a cracking weekend of action ahead. I'd like to say that Racing TV's Martin Dixon has joined us. Racing TV, horse watcher extraordinaire, I don't know what to describe you as. Now look at all those beautiful pictures on his wall, though. Hopefully he can take us into the direction of a few winners this weekend. And I think it's fair to say, although we had Constitution Hill, very impressive last week, Martin, I feel like this is a much stronger weekend, both in terms of graded action and very competitive handicaps.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, people whinge a little bit about some of the racing in January, don't they? But I think this weekend in particular is always a pretty strong weekend of racing, and you always get competitive races. There's plenty of clues to be had as well as far as the better races, if you like, moving into the spring are concerned. Some nice novice races. But the handicaps are the main feature, I suppose, of the weekend, aren't they? Classic Chase at Warwick, always a really good race, and one that, what was it, 3-4 years ago, threw up the subsequent Grand National winner, one for Arthur. So, you know, there are always competitive races that prove to be strong pieces of form, and the Lanzarote's pretty similar as well as a handicap hurdle. You know, again, it's a race that can prove to be provide plenty of clues when you move to the big handicap race. It's some of the festivals at Cheltenham and Aintree later on in the season.
It does. So let's start with the Lanzarote then. And it's great we've got a maximum field as well of 20 going to post. It's headlined probably by Marie's Rock, who was very impressive, stepped up to this trip over Christmas, but she's got a £9 hike to defy. I'd say it's a real competitive race, one that just you'd love to get stuck into.
Yeah, I mean, the tempo of this race will be different, well, much different, I think, to the one that Marie's Rock won over Christmas. Perhaps that'll suit her. She's a strong travelling, free-going type of mare, and stepping up in trip that day, she certainly saw her race out really well. But as you say, she's been hit with a £9 rise, and I think this is a miles better race than the one that she won. She beat some in-form horses, and Antio, the runner-up that day, has had a really good season, but he's probably about peaked in terms of his handicap mark now. And Marie's Rock, off the higher mark, is going to be taking on some horses that themselves, I think, have a few pounds in hand. So it's a different test for her altogether. My own preference, Matt, is for one of the other market leaders, Green Book, for Venetia Williams. Now, I know he's quite a short price. He's arguably not being missed in the market, but he's still a big enough price at around the 5-6 to 1 mark. He's at around those odds for a horse that's really rapidly improving. Now, I was a little bit disappointed with his jumping first time of asking over hurdles back in early December, but he had 2 subsequent runs in December, and he's won both of them. His jumping was better on each occasion. He's been given a mark now of 130, so he's up £8 for those 2 handicap wins. But Ned Fox, who partnered him for the first of those wins, takes off £10 again. That's a huge claim. And if you actually look at the weights and measures, Lucy Turner, who rode him last time, was only claiming 3. Ned's back on taking 10 off. And even with the rise in the weights, you look at him actually theoretically running off a mark of 120 if you take that claim into account. And last time out, he was effectively running off 119. So he's only running off £1 higher if you take the claim into account. He's a really progressive horse. He's got a lot of ability. And I think as long as Ned Fox is a little bit patient with him in what should be a strongly run race, then he's got the tools to still be very well handicapped off a mark of 130.
Yeah, Green Book then for the inform Venetia Williams. Anything else at a price you like in that one?
Cobbler's Dream I'd give a good mention to as well. He's a really enthusiastic horse, winner at Doncaster last time out, and he beat Leon Cavallo, who's a bit of a standing dish in some of the better quality handicaps around 2 to 2.5 miles in the UK. And Cobbler's Dream saw him off quite readily. It was a race where they omitted lots of flights of hurdles, but his jumping's not really looked a problem at Cobbler's Dream, so that won't be an issue. And he's another progressive horse in the field that's a bigger price than Green Book.
Cool. So the Lanzarote hurdle then. We just rewind 35 minutes, and obviously not a competitive handicap. It's a small field graded contest named after the dual King George winner Silviniaco Conti. There's only £5 separating these four. They're all high class individuals. But interestingly, I saw a nibble in the market for Defy de Soy in the last 24 hours or so.
Jeez, you couldn't, could you? It's it's been a while.
It's a leap of faith.
It is. He'd need to come back to his form 2 years ago now. And every time we see him, it pretty much seems, he could it on his old form. You look at his prices, the last 4 starts, 5 to 2 on favourite in the Champion Chase, disappointing. 6 to 5 favourite at Cheltenham in November 2020. pulled up. Then he was 9-2 and he disappointed. And then last time out, 3-1 favourite, and didn't really find anything off the bridle, did he, at Ascot on his comeback run this season? So he looks like a horse that struggles with something these days. And it's a long time since he showed his form. I mean, there are queries about pretty much all of these to some extent. I think I would still expect Mr. Fisher to get it done in a race like this, Matt, to be honest. I think, it's not they're good horses, but it's not a competitive environment. The King George was asking a lot of him. He's not really up to that anyway. I think probably 3 miles on soft ground in a strongly run race would be too much for him. That wasn't the reason that he was pulled up on the day. He never jumped, but we know that they went off really hard in the King George, and it just seemed to take him by surprise a little bit, to be honest with you. He never jumped a fence early on. They were going too quick for him, and he ended up being pulled up. But if you go back to last spring, when he got to within a neck of Frodon at Sandown, that form, I think, would be good enough to win this race. And he's back in a small field. He's back on the ground's never that testing, not usually that testing at Kempton, so we're not expecting it to be too bad in those terms. It'll be pretty much the perfect setup, I think, for Mr. Fisher, who is a previous winner at Kempton as well. So he's going to be fairly skinny in the market, but I do expect him to get it done. I wouldn't read too much into the King George, and I think if that hadn't have happened, he'd be a fair bit shorter even than the sort of price that he is.
Yeah, he was nibbled out in the market as well in the King George. Maybe they expected better, but you're right. This is certainly more his trip for Nicky Henderson. We'll just switch places then, because I head to the Midlands and to Warwick, because I've had a look at one handicap, the Lanzarote. And the Classic Chase, as you mentioned, is a stepping stone to the Grand National. It was 4 years ago for Arthur, and then a year later, Milan's Bar won this one fifth in the National. This year's renewal, not a chance. Last year's winner's back from off the same mark, although he's disappointed on all starts since. Corrich Rambler is certainly a horse going places. He's got top weight for Lucinda Russell after a couple of wins, including at Cheltenham last time out. But the market's headed by this Jericho Rock, who was second at Newbury last time out. So I know a horse that you've been championing, St. Palais. But I get worried about horses who creep up the handicap when they're not getting the head in front.
Yeah, it's another step up in trip for him as well, isn't it? For Jericho Rock. I mean, that shouldn't be a problem on the way that he shapes, but he's only a 6-year-old and he's taking on some hardened, proven stayers. I thought he had a pretty hard race at Newbury as well in late December, and this comes quick enough on the back of it. I can see the case for him. He might well win, but I think any juice in his price has been taken away, really. I was looking at the race more from an each-way perspective, really, and the been and done it horse in the field is Aquila, who was runner-up in this race 12 months ago to Not a Chance, but he, at least, unlike Not a Chance, arrives in form this time out. He was fourth in the Welsh National the last time that we saw him. Really creditable run, admittedly beaten 16 lengths, but he beat most of the field. He ran really, really well for a long way. And although he's a 12-year-old, he seems to be as good as he's ever been, pretty much. And on the back of that run in the Welsh National, the handicap has given him a bit of a chance. I think he's down to 138, so he's dropped him £3. It's the same racing that last season he was beaten half a length by in the Grand National trial at Haydock. So he's a well-handicapped horse. Any rain that comes would be a positive for Aquila, but he does have form without it being extremely testing as well. And from an each-way perspective, I think he's very likely to give his running like he usually does. He's going to be an each-way price. So Aquila each way for me to certainly have a good chance of hitting the frame.
Yeah, Staying Chase in the mud, screens Venetia Williams. I'm still hurting from Aquila. I backed him 28-1 anti-post for the Beecher Chase, first 4 anti-post when he came 5th at 15-2. So I got the value, got everything right. He just couldn't sneak an extra play, so it's still smart. That one. And I mentioned the ground. I mean, it could, with a bit of frost around as well, it could ride quite sticky this weekend. There's not a lot of rain around either, so it could be really, take some getting, because it could be sticky ground for these runners.
Yeah, I think it'll just be proper soft ground, won't it? Without it being bottomless, heavy ground. I think we're just looking at genuine soft ground, which is what you expect really at this time of year. And it's better that way than it is when the rain comes and it gets very, very testing, I suppose. But I do think Aquila is likely to give his running. You go down some of the others, I guess Jericho Rock, with that quick turnaround and the fact he had a hard race at Newbury and it's an even longer distance, you couldn't be absolutely guaranteed that he'll give his running. You've got horses like No Rematch, pulled up last time out, hasn't stood much racing. Jerry's Back always makes mistakes. So there's queries about plenty of them, and I just think Aquila will turn up and run his race. And it might be that with a handicapper giving him a little bit of a chance down £3, that's good enough.
Yeah, there's been lots of support for that no rematch as well. Obviously, Evan Williams taking the Veterans Chase 7 days ago. We'll just work back through the Warwick card because I mentioned it's going to be genuine soft ground, and that could be quite testing for some lightly raced hurdlers at 2:25 in the Leamington Spa. And Adraima won this race 12 months ago in a bunch finish. It was an absolute cracker. Only 7 turn up this time round. There's not a lot to choose between the leading principals on the numbers.
No, it's a competitive race, isn't it? I don't think it's a particularly strong race necessarily for a graded contest, but it's a tight little race and competitive. A horse that won't lack for stamina is the ex-flat horse Staghorn, who's a proper stayer. He was really progressive a couple of years ago on the flat. Hasn't stood an awful lot of racing in that sphere in more recent times, but he did win on the flat back in October at Pontefract over 2 Mile 2. He just keeps on galloping, Staghorn, and he's a pretty smart horse as well. He made a bright start to his hurdling career with a win at Hereford last time out. The second horse from that day, World of Dreams, has been successful since. And I think the slightly longer trip, the front runner at Warwick angle as well, because he's a horse that just bowls on in front. I think everything stacks up for a big run from Staghorn. He is inexperienced as a hurdler, but most of these are, and he is a horse that brings a lot of class to the table from the flat.
Yeah, Staghorn, I remember winning easily at Pontefract, and that's only takes some getting through. We know stamina issues for him. Another grade 2 on the card is the Hampton Novices Chase at 150, only the 5 go. We've got pretty long odds on favourite in 3 under 3-5. Who, I mean, does he deserve to be so short? I know his form last race worked out well, but his last 3 chase wins, he's only actually beaten 9 rivals in total.
He's not going to have to beat many more, though, is he?
Good point.
I think he'll win, to be honest, Matt. I was trying to get him beat, but he's rated 151. He deserves to be. I tried taking him on last time out at Doncaster with Fantasticus, who couldn't lay a glove on him. You know, he's just a good horse, isn't he? He's taken to chasing really well. He's jumping, sound in the main. He made one mistake, I think, at Donny last time out, but other than that, he was sound enough. He's an uncomplicated horse, goes from the front or can take a lead, which around Warwick, not too far away from the pace, is a good thing. He stays the trip thoroughly, and is the best horse in the race, even with the penalty taken into account. Look, he's going to be a short price. He's going to be quite long odds on. I think he deserves to be, and I'm not in a hurry to really try and get against him.
There we are then, 3 under 3-5 for the McNeils, Paul Nicol and Adrian Heskin to win the Hampton for Martin. Now, you're on duty at Kempton tomorrow from the Saturday 4 Racing TV. What would be your idea of your best bet this weekend?
Best bet of the weekend, I think I'll go Green Book in the Lanzarote, Matt. I know he's towards the head of the market, but to me, he just strikes as still being very well handicapped. I do think that £10 claim, admittedly, Ned Fox is inexperienced, but it's a big claim. He's a relatively promising young rider who has experience of winning on the horse already this season. So Green Book, I think, will take a bit of stopping in the Lanzarote.
Yeah, Venetia Williams to continue her good form then. So thanks to Martin for joining us. You can hear from him, say, on Racing TV on Saturday at Kempton and across all Betfred channels this weekend. We look ahead to all the ITV races. But Green Book is his best bet of the weekend. Wherever you're backing, once again, the very best of luck, and please gamble responsibly.